In this guide, I'm going to explain some very basic Osiris scripting, and let's get started. So I got my little character here. Now, I made something about animations. I made a video on how to add animations. So I'm going to show how to script said animation onto a NPC. So say, for example, we spawn an NPC, just anything with human bones, so like just a elf or something. It doesn't matter. All right. Now we can either, there's two ways to go about this. There's one I recommend and the other one which is a bit easier. So I'm gonna start off with the easier way, and then we'll go with the way I recommend. So one way you could do it is with a trigger, to be specific, with an event trigger. So if, for example, I put an event trigger here, and we go in the sidebar properties, and then go to sphere, click on it, and give it a radius of, say, for example, 4. Now, just make sure I'm outside the radius, but near enough. Okay, so now we've got our event. And now, for example, another thing I really recommend is every time you add something onto your map that you know you're going to use for a script, I would put s in front of it. So for example, s_anim start could be a good name for this one. And then this character's name, it doesn't matter. You can just keep it like this, or you can give it s_elf. Let's just for tutorial's sake, we're going to call him s_elf. But I usually only name like triggers or items that I use for puzzles. I give them an s_ name. So when we have both of these guys, right, we go to story editor. Let's create a new script. Test. I'm going to call it test. Okay, so there's a couple of ways of doing this, but we're just going to start off with the simplest way imaginable we can do, and then we're going to clean up the code as we go. So the most simple way to do it is to put a if statement, and then we're going to put it entered trigger, and then we're going to put _player, and then we're going to put the trigger name. Oops, I'm going to get name and GUID like this. Now you might be wondering, what the hell does _player mean in this, and where does it come from? Like, how does the code editor understand what _player is? Well, we define _player by using the database of players. So basically, databases are really useful, and I'll jump right into what databases are in a second. But basically, where it gets this information is when we call the db_players database to be used. So even though it's under it, it's still gonna recognize it. So you can put your database anywhere in your code, and when you call it anywhere in said code, it's still gonna understand it no matter where it is. All right, and then we're gonna put a then statement. I'm gonna put start animation, or let's see what play animation. Yeah, sorry. So we're gonna put the source object. The source object is of course gonna be our NPC. So it's gonna be this, and then animation. Let me go grab an animation I made in one of my other codes. That's the wrong one. Yeah, okay. Animations. Let's just go with this one. Okay, and we're gonna give it this animation. And for the event, An event is whenever you've made an event and you want it to be specific to that event. then you would put an event. But since in this example we don't have any events created or called, we're just going to put 2 quotation marks. These quotation marks are basically to input string, since it requires string right here, but we don't have any event. We're just going to put 2 quotation marks as if we were about to put strings, but not put anything in it. Now we're going to build and reload. There we go. Now if we try our script, he should play the animation. So whenever we get in this trigger, there you go. He's going to start doing the animation. Now here's the best way to do it, in my opinion. So we're going to clean up the code, make it a bit better look in the eye, for the eyes. So we're going to copy the character or the NPC name, and we're going to put a data. We're going to create a database actually. So we're going to type db test database, and then we're going to put, since we're making a database for a character, we're going to put character here. It's very important to note that databases, so say for example database test db, I can make multiple of these, right? But I cannot say, for example, make an item in the same database, or I have to keep it all as characters. So they all have to be characters. So we're gonna paste the character right here. Another thing I really like to do, which is gonna be very useful, especially if you make you put a lot of info in a single database, is to put indexes. So put index 1 here. Since I don't have any other characters, we're going to remove all of these. Another thing I like to do is put a database for my animations. Animation, paste, put an index of 1. So now we have an index of 1 on both. Now here's why we do this. The reason why we do this is because, say for example you have a lot of code where you have to use this name in GUID or this GUID, right? Instead of always copying and pasting, it can get very tedious, right? And when you make a database, what you can do, first of all, we have to call the database, so we have to put an AND statement, and we're going to put our 2 new databases. Now within the parentheses, so we're going to need to specify a certain variable for this GUID, right? So let's call it, for example, test. But what I would recommend you do is you call your NPCs, say for example underscore NPC, something a little bit more intuitive. Just for this guide, we're going to call it test, just to show that you can name it truly anything. It doesn't matter. And then you can either specify the index of 1. So if you've made multiple databases of characters and you want to specify to your code that you only want to use the character that is on the first index, then you would put 1 where the index should be, right? We're going to put index. When I say where the index should be, is that you have to take the same form as this. So as you can see here, it's a character and then an index. And then here we have character, which I named test. You can name it anything. And then the index, which again, you can name anything. You can name it int, integer, number. You can name it anything. It does not matter. I usually name it index because I'm used to it. Now here's what we can do, right? So we've defined both of our databases. Actually, no, I'm wrong. We've only defined one. Going to define the other one, and same thing. So now the first part is the animation. So this is the animation GUID. Now we're going to put a variable to call this specific GUID. I'm gonna call it animation test just for this video, and then index again. Another thing you can do because there are some times where you will again maybe want to specify an index, like just an index. So you can either put 1 here, you can also put a and underscore index equals 1, which will check for the index 1 on everything that's called index. But a thing you can do is you don't have to give it the same index name as your other database. You can call it this one integer. So in that way, if you call indexes for 2 databases, right, but you want this database to be local, you just name it, for example, integer. So it won't affect this specific database. Okay, so now we've put both our database in here. It's going to make it much easier to plug it in afterwards. So our characters variable is underscore test, and our animations variable is underscore animation test. Let's try this. All right, it's done. Let's give it a try. And it should work exactly like it did. Huh. I have done something wrong. Let's see. The source, yes. DB. Okay, let me try something. I think since it's still playing the other animation. Oh, wait. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's it. That might be the problem. Yep, there you go. The animation just bugged. If that happens, just build and reload again. So as you can see, it just works as it should. Now you can do the same thing for this trigger right here. So we can call it, instead of this whole annoying name, just trigger, then db underscore trigger test, this name, index of 1. Okay, so if it gives you this error, database defined but never checked, that means you've made the silly mistake I just made, where you've defined your database in the initialize section, but you've never actually used it in your KB section. So you put and underscore trigger test. In this case, another thing I can show you right now, in this case, we're not even using the index, right? So what we can do is just remove index like this and just leave underscores like that. This basically means that it acknowledges that there's another variable that can be used, but it doesn't care about it. It doesn't want to use it. So it kind of makes your code a bit cleaner. It's not that big of a deal because whether I kept index there or not would not have made that much of a difference. The only difference is that your code seems much less clunky or stuffed. Now it should work. Let's give it a try.
Got to press on.
There you go. It recognizes this trigger as underscore trigger, recognizes this NPC as underscore test, and the animation that's playing as underscore animation test. Alright, so for animations, that's pretty much it. And I'll try to think of another example to make for another part, maybe something more complex, more complicated, maybe a puzzle. But for this one, that's going to be it.